Take three. What I'm trying to talk about and having a hard time with is something that should be automatically understood by anyone with a functioning brain. Anyone who paid attention in school, who knows anything about history whatsoever, should understand because of the prolific nature of the topic. In the beginning, there was Marx and there was Hitler. Neither of them was a good person. Neither of them had a good plan. Both of them had people in their thrall doing very evil, terrible, vile things to other people on behalf of or in the name of an ideology that was not good for anyone. Neither side. Both equally bad. What developed out of it was the Anti-Fascist Action Group, now referred to as Antifa. These were the pro-communist, anti-Nazi side of this ideological, cultural civil war. And on the other side, you had Nazis, Hitler Youth, etc. Historically, communists have always hated Nazis. This lasts to the modern day, where people who call themselves communists, even though they don't understand the first thing about communism, but they want it because free stuff. Equity, equality, free stuff. None of those things would ever happen when communism takes over. The people that are into this movement nowadays are propagandized. They are after all of these goals on somebody else's behalf. They are useful to another cause, and they are idiots because they do not know better. They should. They've been failed by the school system, or they've been propagandized and demoralized to the point that they simply mentally are incapable of discerning truth from untruth, good from bad. Their brains are mush. For a long time now, over a decade, the trend online has been talking about punching Nazis, coming from people who claim to be socialists and or communists and or Antifa. Commies hate Nazis, is what I'm getting at. So imagine my surprise and bewilderment to find out that a bunch of commies gave a standing ovation to a literal World War II Nazi because he's from Ukraine, and Ukraine is currently one of the big important things that they tell people to stand behind, even though the country is run by and infiltrated by and infested with and populated by Nazis. Not neo-Nazis. Neo-Nazis came after the fact. These people never stopped being Nazis when World War II ended. Just Nazis. And in Ukraine, they were part of the Soviet Union at the time. The USSR was in effect. And they betrayed and turned on the USSR and fought against them alongside the Nazis. So this man in Canada that got a standing ovation was from the 14th Waffen SS. He was not just a soldier who did as he was told. He was part of the SS, the secret police. He was a full-blown party member Nazi. He exterminated Jews. He hunted and killed Poles. He was lauded in Canadian Parliament for his efforts at, as they said, fighting against Russia. Russia was not in charge of the Soviet Union. It was part of the Soviet Union. Altogether, the Soviet Union was a ton of countries that had been taken over either militarily or propagandistically, which had joined together as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And it was full-blown communism. Now, what they're talking about now is because Putin in Russia versus Zelensky in Ukraine. And Ukraine's a little guy, and we got to root for the little guy, and others driving out Russia. Well, what's really going on, of course, if you've been paying attention, is that Russia is trying to claim parts that had referendum voted to leave Ukraine's crusty, corrupt, Nazi-infested bullshit and joined with Russia, which was like 3% less worse. But not communist Soviet Russia. Just Russia. Capitalist Russia. Questionable democracy, maybe, Russia. Not money laundering on behalf of kids sniffing and diddling super corrupt elites that like to drink blood, like Ukraine. Country populated and generally governed by Nazis with their weird gay Jewish president. Makes no sense, but I'm sure he's an entertaining puppet. So in Canadian Parliament, a bunch of communists who are sworn to hate Nazis gave a standing ovation to a literal World War II Nazi because he had fought against the commies in World War II. They never even thought about it. They never even bothered. The first step of critical thinking is this consistent with itself? Fans of the Chicago Bears gave a standing ovation to an old Green Bay Packers player who's famous for the time he helped defeat an older version of the Chicago Bears. Do you see the conflict here? Communists saying, punch a Nazi, Nazi's gotta go, anyone we disagree with is a Nazi, right? Then, faced with an actual Jew murdering Nazi, gave him a standing ovation because of his contribution to the fight against communist Soviet Russia, because they don't like non-communist, non-Soviet Russia right now. They are all idiots. They are definitely useful to someone's end goal, which will not be beneficial to any of us. But I'm going to round this out with a little thing that our friends in the Anti-Fascist Action Coalition like to say. If you were sitting at a table with 11 Nazis, and you're just having a conversation and talking and being civil with them, then there are actually 12 Nazis at that table. That's what they say. If you give them the time of day, you are as bad as them. That's the sentiment, right? So what does it mean for all these people giving a standing fucking ovation to a literal Nazi? Seems to me, according to their own reasoning, which of course they don't adhere to their own reasoning, clearly, because if they did, they would have just murdered him right there. And it would have been justified. But no, they applauded him. Not even thinking the next step over about what he was actually being applauded for was fighting against that which they fight for. They standing owed their enemy. Anyone who supports Ukraine is also a Nazi, because Ukraine is full of Nazis. It is nothing but Nazis. Ukraine is for Nazis. If you support Ukraine, you are a Nazi.